Chairman, Mr. Werfel, thank you for drinking from a fire hose for the first 6 weeks of the new job and sitting here for almost 2 hours now. I probably have another couple hours to go here. But, the IRS is something that's, most people out in America, I'm sure you've heard this, kind of considers the boogeyman, and it's sort of a place to be. In the last 2.5 years, every congressional office has acted as the customer service reps for the IRS, trying to reach out and find people. And when I say find, I mean, let me get my Oklahoma accent, find with a D on the end, not fine with an E on the end. And, a lot of when you talk to preparers, a lot of that is due to the fact that, you couldn't get answers to, certain things on the returns, and then people would make adjustments, and they'd find out after a period of time that there were penalties, and so we're trying to get penalties abated and things of that nature. So, I'd hope as you work through this, there's some consideration as well. I want to ask you a couple questions here in the time I have remaining. We talk about the IRA and their allocation. When you look at the tax credits and the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, it's been widely reported that the green energy incentives in the IRA will cost us astronomically more than originally scored last year. The JCT and Congressional Budget Office scored the tax credits last year to be $271 billion. Yesterday, JCT amended that score, and now the IRA tax credits will be $570 billion, more than double the original cost. And this score does not include an update for the EV credits, but Goldman Sachs has said the provision costs $392 billion, which is 28 times more than the original score of $14 billion. Now, we know implementing these tax credits or tax incentives will also be far more expensive than we've ever imagined. In fact, when you look at the Omni last year, the Omnibus bill, it allocated $500 million for the IRS to implement these provisions. However, when we look at this in the Bloomberg tax article, it says it's going to cost $3.9 billion. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy there between what was originally appropriated and what you're saying you need. First of all, I guess part of my question is can you explain why it's 8 times more than expected? And are you seeing potential for abuse in these hundreds of billions of dollars in credits? And with the cost of the bill going up almost steady, in fact, your current estimate of $3.9 billion, as said, is that even accurate now? And if you could answer that, I've got one more question as it relates to that.
Yeah, so I'll try to provide some clarity on that. There are funds that are in the Inflation Reduction Act that are necessary to administer the energy credits. We also felt that we needed additional funds in our base funding. So again, this is a point that the Inflationary Reduction Act funding sits on top of our base funding. Our base funding is roughly, at this point, $12 billion a year, and we've asked for $1.8 billion increment for 24. Within that $1.8 billion increment is $100 million to pay for additional people to be on the phones for energy credit-related questions. So what you're seeing over the 10-year period is the full cost of what the IRS feels is necessary to administer the energy credits that were in the Inflation Reduction Act.
So with the ever-escalating anticipation of the take rate of those EV credits, we've heard this widely reported outside of any governmental agency, does that mean that you're going to have to come back for a second bite at the apple as this continues to rise and more people are taking, which is going to generate more and more questions and more oversight?
I'm not sure. I mean, this is why we have this annual budget process, is to figure out if the world changes, exigent factors, assumptions that we may have made that were incorrect. But based on our best assessment right now, we've provided you the best understanding we have of what the cost to the IRS will be over the life of the Inflation Reduction Act to administer the energy-related provisions.
So currently there are already tax credits out there that are energy
Yes.
tax credits. And so is this 500 incremental just
Yes.
to handle the new EV credits? And so do you
That's
feel
correct.
like you're adequately doing oversight and answering questions on the existing with what your current budget is?
We currently have budget to administer the credits. As you've heard earlier, we haven't had sufficient resources, and therefore we have a backlog for some of those credits. So the idea with our funding plan is to make sure that we are in a state of readiness for the changes that have been made to the Internal Revenue Code so that we can administer it. But yes, we already do manage energy-related credits. The Inflation Reduction Act expands the number of credits or the types of credits that are available, and thus we have to adjust our operations to accommodate that.
So this $3.9 billion that you have set aside right now in the $80 billion, that's what you anticipate based on the original projections of the EV credits. This take rate increase, which again will be more individuals taking it, more businesses. When you come back for your next budget,
If we felt that we didn't have enough operational resources, we would come back and ask for a plus up, yes. I mean, and it's not, and again, I go back to, there's no agenda here. We just want to make sure that we can meet the demand of American citizens who come to the IRS for help.
well, I guess, Mr. Chair, if I may, just the point being with this is as these costs rise outside of your control, your responsibility is to do oversight, answer questions.
Yes.
So the point being here is that as these costs rise, there are other ancillary add-on expenses to the American taxpayer, not just what the allocation of the EV credit is, but the oversight of those credits, the administration of those credits
Administration, yeah.
that are going to impact the American taxpayer. I yield back.